And one thing we hear from parents all the time is how stressful sleep can feel when traveling, running errands, or being in the car. How do naps on the go impact a baby's overall sleep?
Yeah, that's a good question. Kind of like I mentioned earlier, it definitely is not ideal to have like all naps be on the go. You want baby to be in their own environment as much as they can. That's where they're generally going to get the most restorative sleep. But parents also need to live their life. And so if they have older kids that, they're taking to an activity or a game or something like that, I've had many of my children have taken naps at my son's baseball games. Um, so sometimes that's just what it is. I would say for times when you know that naps need to be on the go, the biggest thing is safety. So making sure that your child is safe and that you're practicing safe sleep when you're on the go. Um, there are products that can really help. Like, of course, we've found the Tiny Traveler is a great option, so you can have eyes on your baby if they are sleeping in the car. My biggest concern with sleeping in the car is for newborns, just because if their neck muscles aren't like fully developed and they can kind of slouch forward. So that's like one period that I always loved using the Tiny Traveler because you can have eyes on them, the whole time. Um, so, but as long as it's kind of 80-20, like 80% of the time they're in their own environment, maybe 20% of the time they're on the go and not the other way around.
Great. Yeah, I know my oldest used to fall asleep in the car like as soon as the car would start going. He was always falling asleep in the car. And
Yeah.
I only had like the mirror, so I know what you're talking about. The newborn stage is kind of scary when their like heads are just kind
Yeah.
of slouched over and you don't really know. So thanks for answering that question about kind of how often babies should be sleeping in the car. That's a great
Yeah.
rule to kind of be aware of. One thing that I did find challenging when my kids would fall asleep in the car, when they were really little, like transferring them from
Mhm.
being sleeping, like if it was nap time or if it was close enough to nap time, I would want to keep them sleeping. And it probably worked like 10% of the time that I was able to transfer them into the home. What should parents know about transferring their babies from the car into the home?
Yeah, so that's a common pain point. I think every parent has probably experienced that at some point.
Yeah.
Um, Biggest thing is if your child is in a car seat, like a convertible car seat that you take out,
Mhm.
not to allow them to continue to sleep in the car seat outside of the base, just because the positioning is not actually conducive to sleep. So it can pose a risk of positional asphyxiation. But what I usually find is if they're in that car seat that you can take out of the car and you're a carrier and you can take them inside, bring them into their dark room, turn on the sound machine, and then try to pull them out, rock them, try to, if they wake up, like just make sure they're kind of still in that like deeper sleep, and then try to lay them down in the crib. If it's unsuccessful, like you transfer them and they wake up as soon as you transfer them, then you have a couple options. Keep trying to get them back down. You could hold them safely for the rest of the nap, if that is an option. Obviously, if you have other kids, that's a little harder. Um, the other option that parents certainly can do, it's not something you should do all the time, but like if your baby falls asleep, 15 minutes into the car ride and you're headed home, you could always like stop and get yourself a coffee and just like extend it a little bit so that as long as your baby is safe, that it's a 30-minute nap instead of a 15-minute nap in the car. And then that way, if they don't transfer, it's kind of like, well, that's okay. They got 40 minutes in the car. We'll try again, in an hour for a regular nap or something like that. But biggest thing is don't like sit with the car off and have them sleep if like the car's too warm. Don't keep them sleeping in their carrier car seat once you take them out of the car.
Good to know.
That's good to know
Yeah.
too. When you're saying to bring the car seat into their bedroom, lights off, sound machine on, seems like it's an easier transition rather than
Yeah.
just having them be in the car. And
Yeah.
then for during road trips or travel days, what are the tips for managing sleep during that time when they're in the car for a longer extended time?
Yeah. Good question. Yeah. So you want to make sure you're taking breaks and pulling your child out of the car seat so like every couple hours so their diaper changes and you're able to have them move and stuff like that. So that's important. But I generally find, depending on the length of the road trip, if you can try to plan it, um, like in our family, we always leave pretty early. So if we left at like 6 a.m. most of the time, our kids don't normally get up at that time, so it's a pretty high chance they're probably going to fall asleep in the car at some point in the morning. Or if you can time it during nap time. The one time that I wouldn't time it, like I have parents that are like, oh, we're going to drive overnight and have them sleep, overnight. I actually don't recommend that because it's not going to be restorative sleep overnight and your child is probably not going to sleep like 8 consecutive hours in a car. And it's also not safe, really. You want to be like taking them out consistently. So that's going to be a lot of like disrupted night sleep. Um, so, car naps are probably going to be inevitable on a road trip. Um, Planning activities, making sure that, like, again, you're stopping, you're having snack breaks. If you're nursing, then you're stopping and nursing or you're giving a bottle, those types of things. But I always actually personally prefer road trips over air travel because you have so much more control over when you're stopping and going and when you leave and, when you're getting there versus air travel, you're kind of just like constricted to the times you can get a flight, having to account for like being there so much earlier and that kind of thing. And then, of course, like I said, on the road trips, like bringing those familiar items that are helpful for you. So, of course, again, recommend, if you have your tiny traveler, that's great for road trips. So you're able to always have eyes on your child. We still use it for our 2-year-old. And just making sure you have other items that can help, it run a little bit smoother.
Is there anything, I know when the kids do fall asleep in the car, is there anything that you would recommend to like keep them more comfortable that's also like a safe option? Because I know sometimes their heads are kind of, they just look so uncomfortable when they're not
Yeah,
propped up against something.
I know. For infants, you do want to make sure that their airways are open enough. So like if an infant is slouching forward, you do want to adjust their head. Like that is something that's important. When they're a little bit older and they have that head and neck control, you don't have to worry as much because they generally are going to, they're going to wake themselves up if they have to reposition or something like that. Um, and then, of course, there are different car seats where they can have the head insert depending on their age, and those can help keep their head in the correct position. And then you remove those at a certain age. For older children, have a blanket or you can bring like a pillow or something like that, as long as it still keeps them in the position they need to be in. I know it looks very uncomfortable. Like my 4-year-old will still fall asleep in the car sometimes, and her head is just like dangling forward. And I'm like, that definitely doesn't look comfortable. But you really don't have to wake them up to adjust them necessarily at that age because they really can and will adjust on their own. Um, and, there really isn't like a huge safety risk at that age. So,
Okay, good to know.